is worthless!
No, it can't be! It came from Uranus! I know it did!
Ready when you are.
I'm Matt Needer. Merry Christmas.
Ho, 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 it's John West.
And season's greetings, it's Jim Hall. How's December going for you all? Hope you're not getting too stressed as we count down to Christmas.
Oh, shit, it's Christmas.
I'm afraid so.
I've forgotten.
Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be a shorter show than usual, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
We just wanted to take this chance to wish you all Merry Christmas. Thanks for downloading through the year. And to share a seasonal secret with you, which I think is going to shake your world to its very foundations.
What's that, Jim?
We're not the only Doctor Who fans who record a podcast.
That's true.
There are a few others out there.
Extraordinary.
Well, hang on, you say there are a few others out there. You say that there are, but I'm not sure that some of these things that are being recorded can really go by the moniker podcast, especially when they're just sort of, pro-Moffat propaganda. Like, for example, the Blue Box podcast, hosted by one J.R. Southall. I believe, Matt, you were actually a guest on this abomination.
Yeah, I moonlighted slightly.
You're Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd.
Yeah, absolutely, rolled into one. I'm the Bruce Willis Sybil Shepherd meta-crisis. But I appeared on the Blue Box podcast with the two gentlemen from the On the Timelash podcast as well, which is a great podcast in which two Scottish fellas get drunk and watch Doctor Who. If you can imagine Scottish people drinking, it's extraordinary.
Oh man, secrets are abound tonight. And what I feel I should mention, Flight Through Entirety, which is all the way from Australia. And that's especially appropriate for this time of year because, my God, it's as camp as Christmas. It's as camp as a leopard skin plum duff. But yeah, a shorter show than usual because we'd love to be reviewing something for you tonight. But something else to let the listeners know. What you can't see is John in front of me, not looking too well. We've only just popped the veins back into his neck following his Happiness Patrol review on the last show.
Yeah,
so
actually, now you mention that, I'm sorry. J.R. Southall, he says he likes the Happiness Patrol.
He did mention, yes. It's
now, I think it's not so much a case of who shot JR as who's going to shoot JR.
That should be the name of one of his books soon, I think.
Yeah. Because this is an unforgivable stance. Unforgivable.
Come on, we're under doctor's orders with you, John. You're not feeling too well. We've actually got John lying out flat. He's prone on Matt's sofa here. Me and Matt are just dangling a microphone centimetres away from his mouth.
If JR Southall is listening to this, I just want to make clear that wasn't a genuine threat. I'm not actually going to shoot the man.
Although
or JR's lawyers.
Or his lawyers not going to shoot.
You're pointing your finger at the ceiling threateningly there, though. We were planning on reviewing the entirety of the CBBC magazine spin-off Totally Doctor Who for you tonight, but I'm afraid that's going to have to wait for another time. So it only really remains to say Merry Christmas. And Matt, can you tell us how the listeners could get in touch with us?
Well, of course, you can email us at hello@I'll
Oh, is that your door, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sound like my door.
Are you expecting anyone?
I don't think I am. Who is it?
Looking at the window, there's no one there.
What's that noise? Why has it all gone cold in here?
We are the ghosts of Christmas past, otherwise known as Mark.
Christmas past it. Good evening.
That was good.
Thanks. I'm not really sure how long we have to do this ghostly pretense. Ooh.
Hang on, let me just shankle my ghostly chains, which definitely aren't my house keys. I'm Mark. This is Ben from On the Timelash. That was very horsey. I would apologise for that. Which we
let's sell it this way: On the Timelash. Ooh.
And you've been very bad this year.
Naughty boys.
By not preparing anything for your Christmas special. I'm just adding the ghostly thing to the thing. And as punishment for your opinions on Sylvester McCoy, because you can't form an opinion on season 24 as being rubbish and not watching Paradise Towers and Delta and the Bannerman, which are the best stories in the whole season.
How dare you not like the same Doctor Who as we do? Ooh.
It's as if 50 years worth of television have to be enjoyed in the same way. This is ridiculous. But to see the error of your ways, you must watch Doctor Who in as full and entire a way as possible by sitting through all 14?
12, well, 13, 12 episodes of the Daleks Master Plan, and the single episodes a little bit at the beginning. So enjoy all of that, Doctor Who.
After which you will be praying for the 3 episodes of Delta and the Bannermen. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. So we're really making inroads into other people's audience. There's a lot of people sitting there thinking, going, no, on the time lash, they sound reasonable. Not.
It's alright, too. I did a ghostly voice as well. It's fine. Thanks for inviting us on. Press stop.
Wow, okay, well, thank you very much to the Ghost of Christmas Past there.
You sound terrified, Matt.
I know. Well, they did sound an awful lot like Ben and Mark from On the Time Lash podcast, so I don't know if I'm just starting a vicious rumour there. But yes, so the Ghost of Christmas Past has tasked us with reviewing the Daleks Master Plan, which went out 51 Christmases ago. It's the 1965 into 1966 12-part epic.
You say 12 parts?
13 if we include the prologue, which occurred a month earlier, Mission to the Unknown. So this is 13 episodes of William Hartnell Dalek action. Around the centre point, there is the famous or infamous Feast of Stephen episode, which we looked at this time last year, the famous Christmas runaround.
Christmas.
So yeah, if you want our detailed analysis of that one, I mean, obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about it in passing. If you want our detailed analysis of that episode, have a listen to our last Christmas show, episode 7. But yeah, the Daleks Master Plan, 13 episodes. 3 of them still exist. The rest available through various audio recordings, telesnap reconstructions online, plus an animated version of Mission to the Unknown, courtesy of Mr. Ian Levine. Jim, what do you make of the Daleks Master Plan?
Well, it's quite long, isn't it?
Oh, I hadn't noticed.
I'm just going to think about summing the plot up, but it does go on for such a long time that would maybe be a foolish thing. But should we just boil it down that basically...
I think it's quite simple, this one.
Well, yeah, it is, ultimately.
Really?
The Daleks have got together a syndicate of power-hungry delegates from all over the shop.
From the outer galaxies.
Yeah, including Mavic Chen, Guardian
Yes.
of the Solar System.
Yes.
Between them, they've cooked up the Time Destructor, which is a sort of ultimate doomsday weapon. It's powered by a core of terranium, which is a super rare mineral. And basically, when the Doctor, who's travelling with Stephen, and brief companion Katerina, the Trojan handmaid, when the Doctor gets wind of this, he steals the core, and so the setup of most of the episodes is a chase, really, isn't it?
Yes.
The Daleks or
They're desperate to have this doomsday weapon at the heart of their efforts to conquer the universe.
Yeah. So,
and they clearly needed some allies to help them build this weapon, so they're keeping them along for the ride, but ultimately they want to ditch them, and the Doctor wants to stop this doomsday weapon from being activated.
So yeah, to go back to your question, did I enjoy it? I'm going to answer that by saying this is so wide-ranging. It's several different stories, really, isn't it? It's a bit difficult to just pin it down. Overall, yeah, I do enjoy it a lot, but a lot of the enjoyment is just how roly-poly and bizarre it is. I'm not going to go much further than that now, because I want to know what John thinks of it.
We all want to know what John thinks of it.
I think it's a tour de force.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
No, I think it's...
You can't polish a tour de force.
I think with the notable exception of the Egyptian episode, I think it is really amazing. Very tightly plotted. The plotting is... But I noticed this particularly in the Terry Nation episodes. Now,
ostensibly the Terry Nation.
Ostensibly the ones. But he is ostensibly responsible, or allegedly responsible, for episodes 1 through 5, and then also episode 7, the aforementioned Feast of Stephen.
Yeah.
And I noticed I think it's particularly in episode 1, there was something that I really liked, perhaps because I'm anally retentive, but when Nicholas Courtney's character...
Brett Vine.
Yeah, Brett Vine. When he sees the Daleks coming and he entices Stephen and Katerina out of the TARDIS, he is actually doing something very foolish because the TARDIS is very safe, as we know. But when the Doctor then comes across them and says, well, why on earth did you leave the TARDIS? The Doctor says, well, he wouldn't have known that the TARDIS was safe. And it was that kind of attention to detail about the motivation of the different characters and the fact that...
how all these people interact.
Yeah. It was very... I mean, that's a very boring example of it, to be honest, but it's just very well thought out. The movement from place to place. I contrast this, for example, with The Invisible Enemy, where they seem to go from place to place without any real motivation. Each bit actually can... I mean, I don't like the Egyptian interlude. It just slows everything down, and it's the clear sort of padding element.
Which is a shame that's one of the few episodes that exists.
Yeah, although, I mean, it's quite visually arresting. I mean, I think they've rendered it...
Hartnell gives good hat.
Yeah. Oh my God, Hartnell in a Panama.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that perhaps. But with the exception of that, I think even the logical plotting of why they go from place to place really makes sense. It does connect up. It does create a narrative. My big feeling when I was listening, perhaps that's something else we'll talk about, was that they couldn't possibly sustain a narrative thread through those 12 or 13 episodes. And I think they really do. And I think that's, in particular, the setup in that prologue episode.
Yeah, Mission to the Unknown.
Yeah. I think that's exceptional. And it's so arresting how New Who that is.
Yeah.
I mean, or at least how very classic Who New Who is.
Yeah. I mean, I think I basically agree with you guys. I mean, I love this. I think, obviously there's all sorts of caveats that come with watching a piece of 51-year-old television.
Especially when you're not watching it.
Especially when you're not watching it, yeah, exactly. But I think that just the real sense of it being a week-on-week adventure serial, which, of course, sort of Doctor Who was, what you didn't... It was always broadcast at that point as like individual episodes with individual titles. There wasn't the sense that you were watching, the Daleks Master Plan episode 3 or whatever. You were watching that week's episode of Doctor Who.
That's certainly not episode 3 of 12. It was just an ongoing.
It was just this week's episode entitled this. And I think you have to, there are certain flaws that come with that, and obviously there is some padding, and there are certain episodes that were better than others. But just as a week on week kind of chase adventure serial, each quite often with sort of relatively self-contained locations for 1 or 2 episodes, a good reason to move the narrative on and go somewhere else. It works brilliantly. I've got a few things to say about it, but I do want to say, like, Mission to the Unknown, as John pointed out, is fantastic. This is the standalone prologue, so there's no Doctor, there's no TARDIS. The only familiar characters we have are the Daleks, and it's Special Space Security Agency Mark Corey, who is on the planet Kemble, and he Kemble is a very dangerous planet, dangerous jungle planet, and he comes across the plan that the Daleks are hatching in order to conquer the universe. And tries to get a message back to Earth. The episode initially starts with Corey and his colleague trying to get off the planet, and then it sort of becomes he just needs to get a message through to Earth. And the big cliffhanger is he's killed by the Daleks as he attempts, but ultimately fails to broadcast the message. So I mean, it's a very unusual episode in classic Doctor Who, but it's so exciting, isn't it? I mean, it really
is. It zips along. You feel, because there are 3 or 4 human characters.
Yeah, I think it was 3, and 1 when the action starts has already been sort of injured and infected by a Varga plant, so it's slowly turning into one of these.
And that's the thing as well, because it doesn't begin as an espionage thriller. It begins as a scientific, what you think is a scientific expedition, and then the real nature of the expedition is uncovered.
When Corey sort of plays his hand, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he reveals
and says,
who he is.
Well, actually, the real reason we're here is that I have this hunch that the Daleks are here and hatching some kind of plan. Which was unbeknownst to the other members of the party. They thought they were on a scientific mission. When, as you say, one of them goes mad, which is a great sci-fi trope, people far away on a mission, one of them goes mad. When he goes mad and has to be killed, then it immediately changes gear and becomes this sort of peril race, and and they get picked off one by one, and it's pretty brutal because you've developed quite a relationship with Corey. So you're rooting for him. You want him to. He's discovered the Daleks are there. He was right. His intuition is great. He's quite an exciting character. There's a bit of James Bond going on there.
He's
especially when he says
to kill.
Special space security
license
license to kill.
Yeah.
Or it's the space kill interrogations. Well,
so there's that, and then he gets killed, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So, and then at that point, really, only the Doctor can deal with this.
But then the thing I love about it is, as an episode without the Doctor in it, and I think this plays to one of the strengths of the story as a whole, is there's what you might sort of call the nation-verse, like the Terry Nation sort of big expanded universe. Because we are in an era before what John has so rightly called the Doctor Who procedural in the past. The rules are still being written. But here he's got the opportunity to sort of expand the universe so much more beyond the bounds of just what the TARDIS crew are immediately seeing. So you've got the Special Space Security Force, but I love all the stuff with, the Daleks. The Daleks haven't really been observed in our universe for 1,000 years, but the Special Space Security onto the fact that in the last 500 years they've been on a mission of conquest around the outer galaxies and building these alliances and prepping for a big push. I mean, it's so big in terms of its kind of world and universe building. And then obviously when the story proper starts, there's so much kind of hopping from different places. But, I do love that, and I love the fact that we do, because we spend all our time in this episode on Kemble and see it through Corey's eyes, who's been there for a while. Kemble has a real sense of place to it. I mean, as I say, I listened to the whole of this. I've watched the 3 episodes that still exist, but I listened to the audio recording narrated by Peter Purvis
with great vim and vigour.
Absolutely, yeah. As he slumps slowly further into his chair as he narrates. But even just on audio, the sort of howling jungle, which is absolutely relentless during that episode. Sound design is amazing.
The sound work throughout is terrific. But I do want to say, obviously episode 2 is still with us. I think the jungle is really beautifully rendered. It's tightly shot.
Jungle looks fantastic.
So many plants densely packed together. I want to say all of the set work actually is terrific.
Yeah, the design and the direction, certainly in that episode too. I was jumping ahead a bit, but the design and direction in that second episode especially is I think almost peerless.
So you guys found this quite exciting because we've reviewed a fair bit of Hartnell now in the last 18 months or so, and I think it's an area that we all enjoy. Generally, because I think people have put a lot more, the production team have put a lot of effort in.
It doesn't take anything for granted.
And the rules aren't set down. It's doing all sorts of bonkers stuff. What I'm going to ask is, you say this is exciting. Do you feel this is a bit of a backward step because it's Doctor Who pretty much doing sort of spy-fi, much more conventional sci-fi kind of stuff, rather than the sort of what presumably is appealing about Doctor Who, which is a goofy freewheeling kind of a show?
I don't
Whereas
think
here
so.
we've got... Yeah, it's the Spy Mania thing.
This is nuts. No, not at all. They play with that, but then they give you the meddling monk. They give you Tundra.
That's when we get further on, but for Mission to the Unknown itself.
Oh, no. That's the joy of Doctor Who. It can play with those genres.
It can be this thing, yeah.
It can play with those genres. And it is only that for... I mean, this and episode 1, really, that's that sort of... There's only 50 minutes where it's directly like that. Mm-hmm. And I think they've given themselves the space and the room to play with that. There are things that take place though in that first in that prequel episode that don't happen in a James Bond flick, or what's the thing with Agent 99? Get Smart. Or something that, or the Man from U.N.C.L.E. or whatever,
or any number of shows Terry Nation was doing at this point. For ITC,
yeah. Indeed. So when you've got the Daleks, they've killed the main character, the main hero, and are all sort of barking victory, 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 victory. There's something very chilling in that.
Yeah, because it reminds you of Victory of the Daleks.
Yeah, well, it's also
the most terrifying thing you could probably imagine.
You're right. It's an episode where the Daleks win,
which is the best thing about it. I think that's the thing that stands out for me. I'm not so interested in the spy stuff. It's more that the Daleks get to win, and you really see how formidable they are.
But whereabouts does this come? I mean, just to get into the backstory of it, because obviously I know that Terry Nation was very interested in getting a standalone Dalek series away.
A bit, yes.
Certainly around this point.
But they put the Mythmakers on after this.
No, before. Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, so the story of the Mythmakers goes in between Mission to the Unknown, which is 4 parts.
Did that confuse people? Was there a continuity announcement?
I'm not sure people did a huge amount of research on it. But like Matt said, Doctor Who was a week-on-week thing, so presumably this was just something odd that happened that week. And the fact that you got that cliffhanger, well, we say it's a cliffhanger, the main character's dead, but the tape's there. I think that's enough of an indication that things have been set up. That's not going to be... This isn't Stephen Moffat. He's not going to leave something like that and then not come back to it for several more years.
Listen up, J.R. Southall.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, one thing I would say is, like, because you made a couple of sort of oblique references to the new series there, albeit joking, but the big takeaway that I had from this whole episode is how Russell T Davies is this series. Like, unbelievably so, in terms of just the parallels with watching The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, which we looked at last month, to me were just staggering.
They abound, don't they? Parallels abound.
I mean, everything from, the sort of epic planet-to-planet sweep of one of those stories, the huge universe building. I mean, all the delegates, like... If that's not like the arrival scene in the End of the World or the Medusa Cascade business or something, the Time Destructor is the reality bomb from Journey's End.
It's another doomsday weapon. Yeah, there's loads and loads of ingredients, but ultimately you've got a very, very simple plot that's driving it all. Yeah,
you can see as well that the whole idea of the Time War is seeded into this.
Yeah, and these kind of big conflicts rumbling on in the background.
I mean, you can so see how fans would delightedly sort of retcon this as part of the maybe the opening skirmishes of the Time War.
So I think we're moving away from Mission to the Unknown now towards
the meat,
the body of
work.
So
just before we move on, you guys listened to this. Did you listen to the Peter Purvis?
I did. Yes.
So it's worth noting that Ian Levine put a lot of his own money into getting this animated, this particular episode.
He did.
Which is freely available on YouTube, which is very good of him. And it's good stuff. I mean, I'd really recommend it. I mean, I'd recommend it to you two guys because you've now listened to the original version, so it might be a nice compare and contrast,
Absolutely.
So if you're bored on Christmas Day with your,
your
significant others,
around.
maybe you should get that one up. It's a good quality animation.
Seriously, that will happen.
Yeah.
I will be bored.
Okay, so on to the Daleks Master Plan itself.
Yeah.
Proper. I think I sort of jumped the gun a bit there, but yeah, I mean, it's. Those early episodes in particular, I absolutely love. The arrival of all the delegates, like the crazy design, and they're all. There's bits of it that just flat out work really well, and then there's bits of it where you can sort of see what they've tried to do, and it's so much fun. So all the things like, the various walks that the actors playing the delegates affect. Mavic Chen's, how he holds his pen in order to write, because they've tried to think of an outer space way to get him to write.
This is brilliant. Every single delegate has a different thing.
Yeah.
They're so... the attention to detail, like I was saying, about, right from stupid plot points through to, well, they've all come from different galaxies, let alone different planets. So,
but that's the thing. It's like you stick the Mox of Balhoun in there, and it's no different to what you've got. It's brilliant.
And they are wonderful. I mean, another point on reconstructions for these missing episodes is, for a long time, there was just the Egyptian episode, and is it Counterplot, the one with the mice?
Yes.
Episode 5. And wonderful Loose Cannon did a reconstruction, but left it to the end because there's so few telesnaps, and did a heroic effort getting this all together, and CGI Daleks and stuff. And I think about a year after that was put together, episode 2 turned up, which would have been tremendously useful for them to get some visual references for what the delegates look like and this kind of stuff. But yeah, that opening scene, I mean, we've not mentioned Douglas Camfield, who's the director throughout Daleks Master Plan, who's lauded, is absolutely fantastic. And especially in that second episode, Day of Armageddon, the camera's doing some fantastic stuff.
There's so many tracking shots. There's shots where Mavic Chen is talking to Daleks, and all there is just like him face to face with a single eye stalk, and you don't see the rest of the Dalek. The arrival of, I can't remember who that first delegate is that arrives for a tete-a-tete with...
Is it Zephon the Plant Man?
That's it, Zephon the Plant Man.
Yeah.
That's a great costume, though, because those hands are so... Like, you really want to see the rest of him. But no, he's cloaked, so there's this air of mystery and disgust and weirdness about
him. And he's pissed off as well.
Which I like.
Oh, yeah,
and those huge-looking sets.
It's my default position. So.
No, but you've got that huge conference room set that they've got, and then you've got an amazing jungle. I mean, this thing looks incredible.
There's a lot of effort and money on the screen.
Yeah, big time.
But I think we're lucky. I mean, we're not lucky to not have anything. If I think we're blessed that we've got episodes 2, 5, and 10. Because they're kind of the episodes you need to have an idea of what the whole thing looks like.
You can join the dots, can't you?
You can with just those 3. You can join the dots. And the visuals really are stunning. And once you've seen, even if you've only seen stills, when you then listen through to the rest of it, you are so able to... I think you're
in that world.
There's a splendid visual grammar of this era of Doctor Who, and to be honest, I could visualise it very, very easily. You could feel the direction even through the audio. We should probably talk about the characters. One character in particular, as you mentioned, the galactic... what's he called? The
Guardian of the Solar System.
The Guardian of the Solar System, Mavic Chen. Now, he is slightly... I mean, the rendering of him is... It is racist, isn't it?
Now, I'm glad you say this, because
I wrote this note, is Mavic Chen racist?
I've read around other people's reviews, as people may have noticed.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm not sure.
He isn't, but it is.
Yeah, none of the reviews seem to pick up on the fact that he's clearly got some kind of makeup on, isn't he? Kevin Stone is obviously a white actor, but he's made
They've darkened his skin, and they've sort of pulled his eyes out to give him a kind of oriental...
so he seems to be a multi-opportunities offender,
I was really taken with this, actually.
And he's got the Fu Manchu fingernails.
Yeah, it's interesting that some of the quality of the footage that we still have is that good that you can... When there's close-ups on Mavic Chen, you can see the makeup, especially when he's in profile. And it's very clear that the makeup is there to give him, slitty eyes, basically. An exotic look. And quote unquote. And you mentioned Fu Manchu with the fingernails, but he's clearly a Fu Manchu-esque character, don't you think? Manipulative and...
Oh yeah, but I'm curious about this race thing, because I always thought, he's kind of like a panto villain.
But then he's not doing a cod accent, is he?
He's not doing that.
It's not reflected in the performance, which I think is the sort of the thing that means that it would be a lot more distracting if he was a racist stereotype.
It's set so far in the future that no one makes reference to his cultural background.
Yes.
But the interesting thing for me is, of the other reviews I've read of this, there's Philip Sandifer, who God knows would have picked up on this.
He doesn't mention it at all, does he?
Not at all. Whereas Celestial Toymaker, he rips to shreds because he thinks it's anti-Asian.
The guy's called Chen, and they've tried to make him have slitty eyes. I think it's pretty clear that they're going for the sinister...
The interesting thing for me is Tat Wood's review. I think he's Tat rather than Lawrence Miles, who says he's got a blue face. And I'm just wondering if possibly... there may be some historical document that says, yes, he was made up blue, which could have been a thing that just showed up darker on camera if you're filming in black and white.
Yeah, of course.
Or it could have even, this is probably clutching at straws, there's a possibility they're going for the idea that so far in the future people will have crossbred or just wear exotic makeup or something.
But even if that was the intention, what they've ended up with is a guy called Chen who's got slitty eyes.
Yes.
But speaks like a public school cad, doesn't he?
Well, I think this is something that... I particularly appreciated listening to most of it via the audiobook version. When you listen only to Kevin Stoney's performance, it's a very good performance. It's another one of these urbane voices that we so adore in Doctor Who, but an urbane villain, and so arrogant. So full of himself, so completely.
Well, the number of, about
consumed with
80% of his sentences begin, I, Mavic Chen, constantly introducing himself.
Possibly for exposition.
Yes, that possibly helps as well.
The thing about power corrupting. He's such a good cipher for that. He's such a good receptacle for that. He is constantly trying to, by virtue of his greed for power, he's blinded to the realities of what's going on. So it's not like he, you get the impression that maybe once upon a time even he was a benign dictator. He certainly has the affection of many of the humans.
God, so are we talking about that television sequence in episode 1 where they, where the two operatives are arguing about what channel to put on, and he says,
Roald and Lizanne.
This is a great line. I want to watch the Venus-Mars game. You want to watch your hero Mavic Chen, which I think is an absolutely wonderful line. But then when they watch Mavic Chen's address. And it's such a really obsequious interviewer who I can't remember what they're saying. He's just negotiated a peace treaty or something, and the interviewer's
he's talking up the 25th anniversary of the peace treaty or something.
That's it. And the interviewer's very much of the kind of Prime Minister, is there anything you would like to say to the nation kind of quality, rather than sort of probing. And then he says he's going to take a bit of time off, and they say, well, yeah, all your subjects think that you've really earned this, all of that. I'm
sure they won't begrudge you, something like that.
That's it. I'm sure they won't begrudge you a little bit of extra time or something like that. That was a sort of line of light satire which I really appreciated and felt sort of surprisingly on the nose for sort of old school Doctor Who. And it's a shame almost that they didn't carry it on, because I think although he is, a brilliant sort of kind of arrogant, panto, declamatory sort of bad guy, I sort of miss the sense that, because it's established for us very early on that he's a traitor, and everyone else kind of gets on the same page quite quickly. It's a shame just simply because that sort of early characterization of him is very well loved by a lot of people. I really liked.
So this is 1965. It's only a couple of years after Harold Macmillan had to step down, and it's almost like Mavic Chen is an evil version of Macmillan. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that Macmillan certainly cuts rather a more centrist and inclusive figure
than Mavic Chen,
than many politicians these days.
Oh, I see.
That sort of haughty Macmillan, lest we forget, like Night of the Long Knives, was quite able to be brutal with his own party, etc., etc. Even his hair, even Mavic Chen's hair, seems a little bit Macmillan-esque. But that sort of haughty disregard, that sense of I can go through life without anybody necessarily questioning my motives or questioning my actions, being dealt with courteously by the press and even fawningly. That was certainly a live concern at the time.
I'm going to ask, what do you think Mavic Chen's role is in the story, in terms of, a lot of people agreed that by the time Davros turned up, it's so the Daleks had a spokesman.
I noted this. Yep. He's playing the Davros role, isn't he?
Some years ahead of it, 10 years ahead. Do you think he's fantastic, Kevin Stoney, and the character's great, but do you think he's really necessary, or do you think it might have been nice? Because the Daleks are a lot more articulate than in previous stories here.
The Daleks are quite chatty. I think he just adds an extra bit of... Because in some ways, his narrative role is that he's the more articulate Dalek frontman, isn't he? But that sort of, it's that kind of egotism and that feeling that he is totally above the Daleks. There's a great bit in one of the surviving episodes where he's lambasting the Daleks for their incompetence, and he slaps one of them around the casing and bashes its eye stalk out the way. He
swats its eye stalk.
I know, which is great. And so I think that kind of bubbling sort of ambition, which means that basically when he gets his in the final episode, when the Daleks gun him down, that does feel like a big moment. This kind of tense. The other thing that I like about how the Daleks are portrayed in this story is that it's very much, they're not just the sort of destructive robot tanks. They are very political. Yeah. They've gathered these alliances. The power balance shifts all the time between Mavic Chen and the Daleks, and the two obviously have their reasons to go along with this alliance. So I think in a way, yes, he's a front man for the Daleks who doesn't speak like a Dalek, but he does also show a more characterized side of the Daleks that I really like in this.
And also, I suppose it's a big deal that he's selling out Earth. This is,
yes, that really raises
corruption
the stakes.
Goes right to the very top.
Because you've got all these sort of weird-looking delegates who are obviously from sort of horrible, corrupt planets, and then you've got a representative of Earth there who's prepared, who's on their side. It's shocking.
So, wow, we've got a lot more to talk about here.
Let's talk about the companions, perhaps. Katerina?
Well, yes.
Katerina, Sarah, and are we gonna include Brett in this?
Well, all of those need to be mentioned. Because, all right, should we start with Katerina?
Can we? So she... Spoilers. She cops it in episode 4. I found her death really... Because I didn't know it was coming.
Right.
I'd deliberately not done any research. So
this was your Adric.
Her death is really poignant, and
it's shocking as well.
Shocking, and you get good. It's a sacrifice, and you get good performances from Peter Purves and Hartnell as the Doctor. The sound is left. It's left very silent, isn't it? It's left really open.
Yeah, I think the idea is you would have her body floating off in space, in the vacuum.
It's so quick and it's so perfunctory as well. It's not. Yeah. I mean, she does die. I mean, and actually, the fact that the Doctor and Stephen observed that she died pointlessly because she didn't need to make the heroic gesture that she does. So it's kind of a wasted, futile, quick, ultimately sort of pointless gesture that's over so quickly. And is so shocking, and the characters have to move on so quickly because of the circumstances that they're in. That it's like you feel the full impact of that death. I think partly because it is just so sort of almost immediate. Because
she's constantly talking about her wanting. She basically thinks she's dead the whole way through anyway. She thinks she's on her.
That's
transition.
An amazing touch. And when she says at the beginning, "The priestess told me I was to die." Again, that's a very new series. Like Donna being marked for death, or all of that.
But also, she thinks she's on her sort of trip across the River Styx or whatever to the underworld or through the underworld to paradise. And Hartnell, the Doctor, says, "I hope she reached that place of perfection," or whatever it is.
God, that's amazing. Yeah.
And Peter Purves says, "But not like that." And it's just it is moving. I thought it was great.
I don't want to move on from her too quickly, but yeah. Purvis is fantastic in this, and that tension between Stephen and the Doctor, I think, is great throughout it as well. Yeah.
I mean, you don't.
He's one of the great companions, as far as I'm concerned.
They really need another companion like him now.
Yeah, he is one of the great companions, as far as I'm concerned, and such an underrated actor. I mean, I really think he's
prepared to call the Doctor on his bullshit constantly in a way that he's got real.
Is that part of Purvis's commentary on the audio?
I do like that. There's a bit where he's having a discussion with Sarah, and she's sort of said, "But he was just as confused as all of us a second ago." And Stephen says, "You're beginning to understand the Doctor." And he's got this grip on the Doctor and some of the sort of things he uses to sort of paper over the. Fact that he's just as confused as anybody else and is absolutely winging it along with everybody else. But he seems to bring out the best in the Doctor, and even when the Doctor says, "Oh, keep quiet, my boy," but then he'll say, "My dear boy," and then he'll say to Stephen, "Don't do that. Don't even think about doing that." And Stephen will do it anyway when it's right.
No, I love the conflict between them, but they absolutely pull it together without having to have a discussion about it when. Everything's on the line.
It feels real as well. And that's something that I know when we looked at the massacre a few months ago, like I was absolutely bowled over by that final scene in the massacre where Stephen very directly and very angrily challenges the Doctor on the sort of moral compromises that he's had to make in order to get through the situation. And there are sort of lots of little kind of minor moments like that kind of peppered throughout, which, it's a great performance. But it is a very thought out, sort of very well realised character, in that they've really thought and put a lot of effort into how this guy interacts with the Doctor. What is their relationship? It works brilliantly. I love Stephen.
And throughout this, he has this chunky cord jacket, which is absolutely fantastic.
It's gorgeous.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's like double-breasted, isn't it?
While we're on the subject of sartorial questions, we did previously mention it, but it is worth mentioning again. Though I disliked the Egyptian segment quite a bit, the Doctor's Panama.
Oh, it's terrific.
That needs its own series.
Yeah.
Hartnell rocks a Panama, despite the fact that he changes no other part of his wardrobe. Shove a Panama on him, and he can deal with 40-degree heat.
So we've looked at Katerina, we've looked at Stephen. Sarah is obviously the other. A one-story companion.
And an interesting thing there is there's some issue about this. Katerina gets killed.
Yes.
She's a Trojan handmaiden, and she's an interesting character, but yeah, there's been a struggle for a few episodes to get her to fit in because she's just bewildered by everything.
Yes.
Sarah, obviously, is someone who's from this era and gets it all, and possibly even is used, I can't think of examples, she may even be used to explain stuff to the regulars that they wouldn't be familiar with. How do we find her? She's it's been said before, she's the Emma Peel character again.
She's absolutely the Emma Peel character.
She's kick-ass, catsuit.
And that's the thing, in some ways, as she's an operative of the Special Space Security, whatever they're called, force. And she is also, and this is really shocking, she's introduced to us as Brett Vine's sister. And she kills him, thinking that she's doing the right thing. And he obviously is initially a suspicious character who becomes an ally of the Doctor. And she kills him. So there's some sort of... there's a moral quandary at the start there. But I do think that as the series goes on, and it kind of... especially with some of the detours that it takes in the Feast of Stephen, the Christmas episode, and then the following episode, which has got a few extra sort of bits of business as well. She fits into that lineup very well. She's smart. She's kind of quick on her feet. It would have been interesting to see what else they could do with her.
Yeah, I was going to say, even over the span of those few episodes she's in, she kind of gets down to being a regular companion in some ways. I'm not sure if it would have really made that much odds if she'd carried on. Because she's replaced with Dodo, I guess, isn't it? Quite quickly.
Yeah.
Who, again, isn't a very consistent companion.
No. So, I mean, obviously, Katerina dies in this.
The fratricide thing. Having said I really enjoyed this serial, the fratricide thing, it's made a big thing. He was my brother, blah, 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 but then it's not really.
No, that's true.
Gone back to it. It's really rather an unnecessary note.
The background on this, I think initially they were meant to have been ex-lovers. It's changed for some reason.
Yeah, because they don't have the same surname, so presumably maybe it's half brothers.
Was she married or
the mother? Maybe?
It's the future. Get deal with it.
We should mention that Brett Vine was played by Nicholas Courtney.
Absolutely.
Yes. And he's great as well. And I like, you can sort of see...
So methodical.
And he's definitely got, it's such a familiar voice. It's one that we're sort of so used to now. But, it's kind of tempting to try and find comparisons with the Brigadier. And there are a few. I definitely think it's much more along the lines of the sort of Series 7 Brigadier, where he's a bit more kind of, he'll blow up the Silurians if that's the right thing to do. But it is also sort of very entertaining to hear him play a bastard as well, and I think he does it well.
No, I don't agree. I don't think he is a bastard. When he's been captured...
He's perhaps more ruthless than the Brigadier.
I think he's
might be a bit strong.
He's a bit sharper. His instincts are correct. Like, he wants to find out what happened to his predecessor who was investigating the planet. When he finds out that there's a problem, he's desperate to get off the planet to warn Earth. He'll do whatever it takes to maintain the bigger picture. And that's fine. But you notice that when he is trapped by the Doctor on the magnetic chair, that he's very quick to provide the medicine that's in his utility belt for Stephen when he sees that he's in a fever. And he says something along the lines of, I can't bear pointless death, or that kind of thing. So you get a sense of him as, slightly bluff, but nonetheless committed to pursuing the right cause in pursuit of the bigger picture. That comes over very quickly.
And you've written some slash fiction about Brett Vine and Captain Jack, haven't you?
It's pretty specialist.
I'd have something absorbent around if you're reading that.
Other characters I'd be keen to talk about.
The monk.
That
genuinely, I think, looking back at it, I did remember, because I this is literally my first encounter with this story. I think I remembered, the monk did appear in another episode. When the monk shows up, it really took me by surprise in this. And that's another great little sort of nested story within this that sort of occurs and plays out over a couple of episodes. There are... clearly unintentional, but there are sort of parallels with the Master in that you have this kind of recurring Time Lord character who has this sparring relationship with the Doctor.
If you're going to set the Doctor up against an opposite, you're going to get some parallels there, aren't you? But
exactly.
Hartnell and Pertwee are quite different, obviously.
They are.
So he's a much more whimsical kind of opponent, isn't he?
Yeah, big time. But I like the fact, and one of the things that really struck me was that that a lot of aspects of the monk's character are played for laughs. And he's a funny character. And his kind of sort of cowardly, just agreeing to go along with whoever's around, whether it's Stephen or whether it's the Daleks, is terrific. But also, he reminds me a bit of the Ainley Master, where it's a slightly sort of larger than life performance, but also just the way, whenever the Ainley Master would come back and the Doctor would say something like, "So you escaped from Castrovalva," or something without any real explanation for what had happened.
I'll explain later.
And I love the fact they do that here, but almost play it for laughs. It kind of feels really meta, where they're sort of saying, "Well, how did you get out of that situation that we had at the end of the Time Meddler?" He said, "Well, it was complicated, but I got there," and
Well, better than that, the monk disables the Doctor's TARDIS lock and then gets out of it in front of our eyes, and it doesn't really make any sense.
No.
When Stephen says pretty much WTF, the Doctor's like, "I don't want to talk about it anymore," as if he's got some very personal thing going on with his jewellery.
Yeah, so it doesn't quite sort of stack up the monk's role in this, but I do sort of appreciate that at that point in the story, he brings a very different tone to it. He's,
This is the new
he was a Dennis Spooner character, wasn't he? And of course, Dennis Spooner was responsible for the episodes at this point.
And it's a New Year's Day episode, the one that he initially appears in as well. So it's all sort of light and fun. They land at the test match.
I love the cricket bit.
Oh, just before we get to the cricket bit, which I also want to talk about, we should mention, of course, that he was played the monk by Peter Butterworth. Famous, of course, for his appearance in many Carry On films. But yeah, by casting such a well-known comic character actor, there's really only one read on that character that you're after, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's great fun, and like you say, it's like that putting him up against Hartnell. Hartnell is a very good comic actor, and he's funny, and I like that sparring between them. I like that sort of slightly tetchy rivalry.
Yeah, it would be a mistake to have given Hartnell a master-like opponent who was dead set on killing him or something.
Well, especially, it's a set of episodes that, whilst being fun, and I don't mean this as a criticism, it is like very grim of tone, and there is a lot of sort of tense, sort of shouting, very declamatory people like Mavic Chen in it. That it does add a nice beat, as does seeing the Feast of Stephen in context, and then the sort of the following episode, which doesn't just ignore the narrative in the way that Feast of Stephen does, but has a few sort of comedy interludes.
In between killing
one of these
delegates.
comic interludes, of course, being the cricket match.
Yes, being the appearance
and
of
the commentary.
Yes.
Which could be a parody of cricket commentary today.
Yeah.
Test match special or something like that.
It's brilliant. It works so well. But also it is a very nice sort of palate cleanser in the way that if this was 13 episodes of sort of grim shouting and very sort of frantically tense conversation, it does mean that when the story goes into its final phase, that we're not worn out by it. I didn't feel sort of burnt out on this story because it does throw in other aspects like that.
Again, that cricket interlude is very RTD, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of, we're listening to some other media, in this case, cricket commentary, and it's ludicrous. The TARDIS...
It's like all the sort of celebrity cameos that you get in the RTD season finale, like the Richard Dawkins or whatever.
Yeah. Well, hang on, you say celebrity... Were these actual cricket commentators?
Oh no, I think they were actors.
Yeah.
But probably in person.
But
possibly doing a vague impression.
It's in that mould. Obviously, now if you were doing it, you would get the actual, cricket commentators.
But what I loved is obviously the joke here is that they don't pause to consider the incredible nature of what they're seeing. So the TARDIS materialises in front of them on the cricket pitch, and their take is, well, this will make it very difficult for England to progress.
Is there a precedent for this?
Yeah, is there a precedent? It's going to make it very difficult for England indeed. That's going to take at least 2 or 3 hours to clear off the pitch.
It's just so funny.
And then it disappears again. Well, that certainly makes things a lot easier. they don't, Jesus Christ, this thing has come and gone. It's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
So, are we going to dwell on the Egyptian episode anymore, or have you already...
It's just one stop off too many.
Yeah, it feels a bit jarring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If anything, it's easing your way out of that Christmas break and back to the home stretch where things get pretty grim.
Oh my God. So I'm just going to rave about this for a minute.
This is like Game of Thrones, isn't it, for Doctor Who in the 60s?
It's astonishing. And that whole finale, that whole sort of final rush to the end is incredible. So basically what happens, spoilers ahead, but what happens in the final furlong is that the Daleks time destructor is activated and time starts to speed up, and you have this. I'm going to say,
it's not like the Time Monster.
No,
Terry Walsh isn't frozen as a window cleaner.
No, there isn't a giant chicken flapping around. So the way the episode ends, as I say, I only have enjoyed this through audio. I've not seen any visuals for this, but you have the Doctor and Sarah trying to get back to the TARDIS where Stephen is waiting for them, whilst Sarah and the Doctor start aging. In Sarah's case, to death, as the planet starts to crumble and decay and go from being a verdant jungle down to a desert. Now, as I say, I've only got the sound design and the performances to go on, but they are absolutely...
And Peter Purvis's narration.
And Peter Purvis's narration.
Let's not undersell it.
But they are absolutely astonishing. And there are so many bits. I was completely gripped listening to that finale. The description of seemingly what happens to Sarah is, that is the most brutal death, not just of a companion, but possibly in the whole of Doctor Who. She's aged to death and then her bones are scattered to the wind, apparently. This is what I'm told by Peter Purvis.
He came round earlier, didn't he?
But the bit where Stephen then comes out of the TARDIS and helps the Doctor back in, and Hartnell kind of gives this anguish kind of shriek. Everyone is working at 100% here. The sound is absolutely amazing. And it's just such a brutal concept. And then it ends as in the way that the Massacre does as well, which I really appreciated. Just the two of them almost kind of taking a moment to go, what the fuck has just happened here? To take it into, accept just the sheer level of devastation.
The very sombre end.
It's so sombre, but, again...
going into the Massacre.
And of course, Sarah...
That's the next story, isn't it?
Yes, that's the next story.
Christ, Doctor Who was grim in those days, wasn't it?
Sarah Kingdom, of course, she went back to help the Doctor when Stephen was running away, and you can feel that guilt in Stephen that it wasn't him that had gone back. He didn't notice even that she'd left him to go back. There's all sorts of things going on there. It's just extraordinary. Coming to the sort of overall themes of it, I did feel very strongly, and perhaps Jim, a bit more about the exact split in personnel and responsibilities when, what exactly was Terry Nations, what exactly was Dennis Spooner's, and that's something I'd like to know a bit more about. But there's I got the sense of at least an authorial arc. There's something going on here which is about, well, it's anti-fascist, isn't it? I think it's very powerfully anti-fascist. The Daleks are clearly fascists, but then you see elements elsewhere, like the Special Space Security Agency, SSS. Yeah. They wear black uniforms. There's clearly something, and when you first meet them...
Mavic Chen as a sort of dictator, but with a propaganda arm who's prepared to... Yeah.
But also with with the Special Space Agency, they although individuals in that agency are able to be convinced, they start by believing their orders, only believing their orders, doing what they're told, not listening to evidence, to the extent, of course, that Sarah Kingdom kills her own brother in cold blood without even listening to his excuse or not excuse, but without listening to his reasoning about why he's acting the way he is. Even the Council of Intergalactic Weirdos who are wanting to ally themselves with the Daleks, they're so blind to the hegemonic program of the Daleks. They want to get rid of everything. They're only interested in themselves, and they want to wipe everything clean.
Even when the Daleks start shooting other delegates, there's no sense of hold on.
Yeah, and I think that's actually just in a narrative sense. That's something that doesn't quite hold together in the final 3 episodes.
Yes.
Mavic Chen, at various points, even Mavic Chen would have gone, you know what, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But he keeps going back. I know it's meant to be.
He gets
sort of
gradually more
hubris.
But yeah,
I'm really interested that you raise that kind of narrative arc. They do make a point within the episode credits at the beginning, even though the later one's written by Dennis Spooner, it's from an idea by Terry Nation. It's like those are the words on the screen, which you don't get in any other Doctor Who. This is Terry Nation's universe here, and Dennis Spooner lives in it, I suppose.
John may not have heard this, but the famous story with this is Terry Nation was tasked with doing this, rather like the Ghosts of Christmas Past have asked us to review this epic story now.
That's where the parallels end.
Because he had because Terry Nation had a lot of other work on, and he was trying to sell the Daleks as an idea in their own right to American TV. He kept promising the scripts, and eventually just sort of turned up properly at the crack of dawn in a taxi on his way to the airport and just handed over an envelope with, I think it was like 20-odd pages of notes. So yeah, I think the story idea is Terry Nation's. Dennis Spooner absolutely puts the meat on the bones. I may be totally wrong there, but I think that's the...
It's absolutely... I mean, Terry Nation, always... There are no bones made in interviews with Terry Nation about how, the Daleks to him represented the Nazis. That's not a subtle subtext in his work. But I think, he does write... He essentially writes Second World War movies, like in outer space, in that they are...
I'm going to say this is shifted on a little because obviously the Daleks are the ultimate baddies in it, but I mentioned Spy Mania and stuff earlier. This is Christmas 65, and Bond would have been at the very peak in cinemas. And even that thing like getting the delegates together as a syndicate seems faintly reminiscent of things like Thunderball, which has the famous stuff with Spectre. That's the first time you really see Spectre having a meeting.
Well, and, Thunderball was out earlier that year, wasn't it?
It was massive. And it's the famous bit when, we don't tolerate failure, and the chair, I think the guy gets electrocuted and falls in. Yep. The year before that, Goldfinger, which doesn't have Spectre but has Goldfinger doing his plan with all the mobsters and the Fort Knox model. So I think he's probably taken a few cues from that as well.
Yeah. But I do think also though that the Spy Mania era does grow out of the Second World War film. It's like their roots are very much in the sort of same narrative traditions. And what you have is he likes creating sort of quite linear adventure stories, but just with this real sort of War of Nations kind of subtext that lies underneath it. And I think he's not often regarded as a particularly sophisticated writer, Terry Nation. I think, in the way that, like, he's not necessarily a writer of sort of subtle ideas that come through in dialogue. But as a universe builder, I mean, and that's, it comes back to what I said when we started reviewing this, as a piece of, like, big, grand-scale universe building where all the characters kind of have their place within it. The Doctor is one unit, and the TARDIS crew, the Daleks, Special Space Security, Mavic, Chen, the delegates, and how all of these people interact and what the kind of sort of shifting kind of political ground is like. It's incredible. It's such a good piece of work.
There's no doubt for me a lot of this is ramshackle and made on the fly, but it does all come together in a weird way.
Yeah. And I think that, obviously we've talked about some of the political themes, but the wider theme, which seems to me to be the wider theme of Doctor Who, we've seen it time and again in the War Machines, the Silurians, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, questioning authority. Questioning authority. Don't trust them. Don't take it implicitly. You've got to question. You've got to question the motivation of why these people are telling you something. Why are they telling you to do something? Why are they telling you to invest yourself in an idea or go with them on a journey? You have to question it. It's not a case of not believing in anything, but it's just a case of making up your mind for yourself. And that's something that I think it's absolutely writ large in this, but it's throughout the whole of the Doctor Who universe.
From me, I'm just going to wrap up saying, I asked at the top of this review, do you feel this is a bit more of this is Doctor Who doing space opera in a lot of ways, and that feels to me like maybe not something Doctor Who should be doing. It sort of drags it down to doing Star Trek and all these other kind of conventional sci-fi shows. After we've discussed Daleks Master Plan, are you going to dismiss that still? Or?
I think it plays with several different genres. I think that some of the sillier stuff in Feast of Stephen and the following episode, which sort of goes into New Year. But even then, actually, when you counterpoint the crowds in Trafalgar Square with the countdown of the Daleks, and you've got the Daleks doing their own countdown, which is sinister and very different to the sort of frivolity and countdown.
Yeah, they're watching Jules Holland, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think that it's sort of.
I mean, my point's more, should Doctor Who be going into this more conventional? I agree with you totally. It does have so much bonkers stuff in it. But would you be happy if Doctor Who strayed towards this too often? Or are you happy that it then goes off to...
I'm certainly happier.
Historical France and the Celestial Toymaker.
I'm certainly happier with this form of story arc than with the sort of fannying around, like we've actually got these independent stories, but we're going to pointlessly fanny around with them for 5 minutes, adding this other bit that's supposedly enigmatic. If you want to do a story arc, do a story arc. This does a story arc. It takes something over a long time and builds it. And yes, they go to different places, but it's all very much on on task. And I think, even though they go to different places, they're different things, different genres, it connects up very well. That running thread is perfectly present.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I mean, my attention wandered slightly, but all I could just keep thinking was like, this feels like RTD era Doctor Who. I think in its ambition, in its methods, in to an extent within some of its characterization and its kind of weighty themes offset against fun space adventure. So yeah, I mean, I sort of went in with low expectations, but I think this is a triumph.
Excellent. So that was the Daleks Master Plan. I think reviewed in full. So I very much
and then some.
I very much hope that's appeased any denizens of the afterlife, and we don't have to have any more spectral visitations this evening.
But Jim, it's getting so cold in here.
Can anyone else hear that? What's that at the door?
I can't stand the confusion in my head.
Greetings. It's the ghost of Christmas present here. But no Christmas presents for you, boys. You've been very, very naughty. Instead, you can have this Christmas box, JR, from the Blue Box podcast. I'm here to tell you to mend your ways. I've been listening to your podcast, and I'm not happy with everything I've heard. Not happy at all. Your review of Kinder was just astonishing. It's the second best story of the 1980s, and one of you guys gave it an absolute kicking. That's just not on. And what's worse is when you got to the first best story of the 1980s. I'm talking about The Happiness Patrol. You all gave it a kicking. You said it was like a bad attempt to imitate Pinter. You said it was a poor attempt to satirize Thatcher. You compared it unfavorably with the Time Monster. So I'm here to tell you, nay, to command you, to buck your ideas up. I've had enough of listening to you guys giving Moffat a hard time. The last 5 years, we've had more imagination, depth, penis jokes, kisses to the past, and resurrection than we've ever seen in Doctor Who. It's been wonderful. If you like imagination, depth, penis jokes, kisses to the past, and resurrection, that is. And with the Christmas special on the horizon, it's a safe bet there'll be some more imagination, depth, penis jokes, kisses to the past, and resurrection to come. So, here's my Christmas message to you. I want you to enjoy the Christmas special. No, that's not right. I command you to enjoy the Christmas special. Now, back to whatever it was that you were doing. And no more miserliness towards Doctor Who, you bunch of Scrooges.
So thank you very much to the Ghost of Christmas Present there. That's our second visitation.
Yeah, we were sure schooled there.
That was spookier than the last. John's hair, every hair on his body has turned totally white.
Yep.
I've got to say, I was a bit surprised because we have had a few messages from people who seemed sort of genuinely somewhat aggrieved that we gave short shrift.
That we continue to breathe.
Well, maybe after this episode. But that we gave short shrift to the Happiness Patrol. Is it, well loved by fans? I thought it was a bit of an outlier.
I think the Candyman has a bad rep, but I think it generally does have a bit of a good rep. But I thought I was quite positive about it.
Well, you were for a McCoy, but I guess no. Once again, we yielded to the sound and fury of John West.
I think Doctor Who has bad fans.
I think Doctor Who.
If they like this, then they're just bad people.
If Doctor Who fans will listen to this, they'll listen to anything, including the Happiness Patrol.
If they like the Happiness Patrol, I question their taste.
Fair enough.
I was going to say, I think we've reviewed 3 McCoys so far: Ghostlight, Happiness Patrol, and Dragonfire. So we've got another 9 to go.
Well, we're a quarter of the way through it.
Oh, there's a lot of treats ahead for you.
I'm told. Yeah.
So, and on the other half of the Ghost of Christmas Presents message, are we looking forward to the Christmas special this year?
Oh, absolutely! It's going to be a cracker, isn't it? I mean, just look at the stills. What's not to like? It's a superhero episode of Doctor Who. It can only with Matt Lucas. It can only be good. There's everything to love.
if tone is not being conveyed by successfully by John.
John's got his arms folded very tightly here. But you'll find out what we think of the Christmas special probably in about 5 years' time. Well, shall we wrap things up for this evening?
Yes. Well, thank you to all the ghosts that visited.
Thanks to both the ghosts who have come a knocking.
Both the ghosts and. Wait a minute, it has got cold in here again, hasn't it? Can anyone else?
No, I think it's getting warmer.
And it's getting cold again.
Yeah.
Hello, dear I'll explain later, and welcome back to the Christmas Messages. I'm Brendan, and I'm the only ghost of Christmas yet to come to be providing a Queen's message. As you know, we're a bit ahead of you in Australia, so we've just recorded our episode for Chris Chibnall's first Christmas special, The Song of the Taran Woodbeast, and let me tell you, Mira Sial makes a truly magnificent 13th Doctor. But your future may not be so bright, as I offer you a glimpse of your next Christmas episode, which you've not even recorded yet.
My gift's not for you. It's for John.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
There you go, John.
Spooky? Oh my, yes. But I'm getting ahead of yourselves. This is an ominous sign of things yet to come. Ignore at your peril. Now please excuse me. President Trump is about to announce what grade of hazmat suits we need to wear outside tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.
Well, thank you very much there to the Ghost of Christmas Future, sounding suspiciously like Brendan from the Flight Through Entirety podcast. Got some ghoulies from down under there.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry, terrible joke. Sorry, Brendan. Thank you very much, Brendan, for recording your message.
So it sounds like our Christmas isn't quite done. Does this mean we're going to be coming back sooner than the listeners might have hoped?
So yes, as the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come said, if you check your podcast app on Christmas Eve, you'll find a bonus episode from us where we're going to be taking a look back at The Runaway Bride, so the Christmas special from 10 years ago this year.
Who knows what we'll think?
Who knows what we'll think? And also looking into our future as well. We mentioned this on last month's show, and we now have plans in place. We are going to be doing some listener drinks in the new year. So yes, if any of you are in the London area, we will be in the Blue Posts
You sound
pub.
like a policeman.
Yeah. If anyone's been seen, if any of you suspicious characters have been seen,
keep them peeled.
If anyone is in the London area, we will be in the Blue Posts pub on Saturday, the 28th of January, from 3 p.m. onwards for an I'll Explain Later themed drinks.
The Blue Posts pub is where?
Newman Street, not to
Newman
get confused
Street.
with the other one, which I think is around.
Yeah, helpfully,
Berwick Street, I think.
Yes, there's about 1 million pubs.
It's not that one.
Yeah, this is the one at the back of Oxford Street. It's Newman Street and East Castle Street,
Fitzrovia,
yeah,
as it's known. So yes, we'll put full details up on the website, up on our Facebook page, up on our Twitter feed. So there are about 1 million pubs called the Blue Post in London. So we didn't.
But this is a Sam Smith, so it's nice and cheap.
Nice and cheap. It would be wonderful to see as many of you in there as possible. Obviously, we'll remind you on our next couple of shows. But the 28th of January, it's a Saturday, 3 p.m. Come on down. We'd love to see you and talk Doctor Who.
Be fantastic. The Candyman's already promised he's going to be there.
Yep.
He's got words to have with John.
I'll have my lemonade ready.
Yeah, squirt it at his
You're
feet.
going to be squirting.
I'm going to squirt something at his feet. So I don't know what I mean by that.
Oh boy.
Well, on that note, thank you very much for listening
and
to our December
thanks to all of our spectres tonight. We've enjoyed having you knocking on our door.
Yeah.
But that's all we've got time for tonight. So we'll see you on Christmas Eve for that extra special episode. But until then, it's good night from me, Jim Hall.
Merry Christmas from me, John West.
And Happy Winter Festival from me, Matt Needer.
It's Winterval, isn't it?
Yeah, Winterval.
Yeah.
Can't call it Christmas anymore. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
On the 12th day of Christmas, my Who love sent to me
12 bold technicians,
11 Peters Purving,
10 Egyptians charging,
9 parts are missing,
8 Butters Worthing,
several parts are padding,
6 gurning Hartnells,
5 golden deaths, 4th walls broken,
3 Mavic Chens,
2 companions dead,
and an animated recon from Levine. But it's getting so cold in here.
You sound like the Big Bopper.
Sorry.
Hello, baby.
A bit less.
No, don't have another crack at that and we just won't laugh.